Welcome to episode 102. My name is Rachel, and I can be found pretty much everywhere as Well for Pearls. This is Wool and Spinning, and this is the podcast that we chat mostly about hand spinning and all things fiber. I want to welcome you to this place. Thank you for those who are subscribers of the show over at patreon.com/wellforpearls. You guys keep the show and the lights on here month after month. To those who are new and just checking out the show, I really appreciate you giving us a chance. And to those who are returning viewers, welcome back. In today's show, I have a quick giveaway announcement to make, and then we're just going to kind of get into catching up on what I've been working on this last month. I always take August off for podcasting. I do one show at the beginning of the month, and then I take the rest of the month off because we're usually away throughout the month. And I used to try to record videos that were scheduled on YouTube, and they would pop up throughout the month, but I found that because I wasn't here and often we were off grid, and if there were any technical issues, it just didn't really work very well because I was worrying the whole time about whether or not the show released properly. So instead, I just take the month off. We go off grid for a month. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I don't post a lot. And then I come back fresh for the fall because usually we hit the ground running in the fall. So in today's show, I've got a brand new spin that I literally just pulled off the wheel and made these guys wait while I pulled it off to chat about really quickly. And I've got some sock yarn that I finished and some socks that I'm working on. So we won't do a spinning growth today. We'll have a spinning growth for next show, and maybe we'll even have two, if depending on what I've got, what other things I have to share. So how are you? How was your summer? How is your fall going? I'm actually doing really well. I had a personal best this morning at the gym. A PR is called a personal record or a personal best. And I PR'd my squat clean this morning. For those who do CrossFit, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it felt really good. So I kind of felt like Superwoman, because when you clean, you just feel amazing. So that's where you bring the barbell up and you hook it up onto your shoulders. So it felt really, really good. And you got to go into a full squat when you receive the bar on your shoulder. So that felt really, really good. If there's other CrossFitters out there, I would love to talk to you. I was actually thinking, a little bit of a side note here. I was actually thinking in the Ravelry group, I've had a few messages over the years, like especially in the last year, I've had quite a few messages about people wanting a thread that's dedicated to like weight loss and that kind of stuff. We have one in the Slack channel that's for health, because the idea is to focus on health and wellness and doing well. Whatever that looks like for you, whether it's getting out for a walk every day or getting to the gym or just eating clean or eating well. I really don't want, particularly because the majority of this community is women, I really don't want to focus on weight loss and being smaller. I think there's a lot of those messages out there. Our daughters get inundated with it, and I just don't kind of want to be a part of that. That's great if you are on that journey and for whatever reason, health, whatever, you feel that you need to lose weight. But I was sort of thinking more about starting something around on the Ravelry group for those who aren't on the Slack channel and aren't on in the Patreon community. Something more around like health and fitness and those, like I would love to connect with other people in the community who are like fellow CrossFitters, for example. If there's other yogis out there, because I do yoga 3 days a week, some of that kind of stuff, like it would just be really fun to sort of share some of that stuff. Like I know a lot of people do Orange Theory. There's a lot of different stuff out there, and it would just be really great to chat and sort of have like a forum to talk about some of that stuff, because it's sort of this whole other unrelated, non-fiber journey. But a lot of us try to be active because we are so inactive when we're sitting, knitting, spinning, weaving. For some, those are physical activities, and for others, those are particularly sedentary. So anyways, I'm sort of just thinking out loud here, but if there's some interest, I'll start a thread on Ravelry. All right. Somebody bought a new wheel. Oh, Eve got a new wheel. So a Kromsky Symphony. Congratulations, Eve. That's awesome. Ellen, you're in Seattle. We're in Vancouver. So cold, rain. We actually have some sun out right now, which is beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to go outside after I'm finished this and edit outside on the laptop. So I hope that you guys are well. And we'll, Patreon Krista. So Patreon says, episode 103 because I mislabeled it this morning, and I went back and fixed everything back to 102. But I forgot to switch the Patreon post. So it's episode 102. Just bear with me. I'll fix it when I upload it tonight for Patreons only. So let me just say a little plug for how these shows work. Tonight, after I put the kids to bed, if my husband goes to the gym, then I'll be doing bedtime. So after they go to bed, I will come down and make the show available to patrons tonight. There won't be show notes. Those come out later in the week. But the show will be available for patrons tonight. So once the live stream is done, it'll be locked and you won't be able to access it until this evening. So just hold your horses tonight. You'll be able to get to it tonight, and I'll fix the 103, 102 thing. I was all confused this morning. I was all mixed up. All right. Oh, I think you say your name Alexina. You've got your shortened to Alex. Welcome. She's brand new to the Patreon community, so I wanted to say a quick hello, Alex. Welcome. And you're in Montreal, Canada, fellow Canadian. So, and actually we had our honeymoon in Montreal. Love that city. So, yeah, that's awesome. All right. Welcome to everybody else. Let's just do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll get into the show. So we have the Patreon giveaway every month. It's for our Patreon subscribers. I give out a calendar, which is just really super fun. It's meant to be inspirational. Sit on your desk at work or maybe in your craft room at home. This is going to be starting January 2019. So I changed the dates, changed the photos, updated them. So they're a little bit new. So if you've won a calendar in the past, this one is different. If you would like one of these and you have not won one through Patreon, or you're not a Patreon subscriber, please get in touch with me. You can pay me through PayPal and I will mail it out to you. I'm not totally sure what I'm going to price them at, but if you would like one, I will figure that out in the next week or so, and you can get in touch with me and I will send these out to you. It would just be the cost of shipping and then the calendar. So I'm hoping that I can keep it to about $20 US, but I just have to crunch a couple of numbers. And that would include shipping. So our winner this month is Pam Clark. Congratulations, Pam. If you could send me your address, that would be amazing. So congratulations to Pam. We have 2 fiber giveaways this month because we didn't do one in August. I left the fiber in the other room because that's kind of how this week is going. So I will show it off next week. In the meantime, if you could hop into the September episode thread, we will draw the winners the first show in October. And if you could just pop in there and just let us know where you are. Where in the world are you spinning? You don't have to be a Patreon member. You can be anybody in our community. Just pop in there, be a member of the Ravelry group, and tell us where you are. So like for Eve, for example, she would say she's in the UK. She could even say where she is in the UK. That would be great. All right. Oh, Tour de Fleece. Tour de Fleece ended at the end of July. And I actually have a whole pile of fiber sitting here from my friend Mari, who's one of our Patreon members, that I need to organize and divvy up. And then we've got Tunis that was donated by Kelly in our community, and she also donated some Black Welsh Mountain, and then all the fiber from Mari. That we've kind of ended up with a lot of prizes. So thank you so much to both of you. Pop into the Ravelry group if you participated in Tour de Fleece and were active in those threads. Post one post per person, just what you finished, and just let us know. Just some photos and what you did and everything, and then I'll draw the prizes and everything for next week for next show, because I need to go through all this stuff and I need to divvy it up. So next show we'll have Tour de Fleece prizes. I just didn't get to it in August, and we will do that next show. All right, yeah, sounds good. All right. Before we get into the show, we have some really sad news, and I wanted to do a shout out because you guys know what a huge fan I am of the this is all dusty, oh well, of the natural knotwood spindles, and they are located in just outside of Winnipeg, in Manitoba, in Hazel Ridge. Wayne and Kelly Kapoor. He makes the Kapoor spindles. So I have talked about Kapoor spindles on the show at length, particularly in a lot of the spindle shows a few years ago when I was doing a lot of spindle spinning. He does the gorgeous wood, and he does ornaments, and he did a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyhow, he died unexpectedly in August. And so thoughts and prayers with the Kapoor family. Kelly, his wife, had gone onto Instagram and posted that they would sort of sell all of what he'd made and all the whole shop sort of until they sold out. And we were actually away at the time. We were in the middle of British Columbia driving up to Jasper, just in Alberta. And Katrina texted me and told me what was going on and told me that there had been this announcement about Wayne having passed away very unexpectedly. And because I'm such a huge fan of his, and I had always hoped to get one of his drop spindles because I have quite a few of his Turkish spindles, the Kapoor spindles. And so I actually asked her if there's anything in the shop left on Etsy that was a drop spindle. I didn't care what the weight was. I didn't care, like, if it was the only one, didn't matter. Like, I just wanted one of his drop spindles to remember him by, and to because they're sort of like, that's it. They're obviously gone with him. So she, luckily there was one left in the shop. She was able to get a couple of the spindles that she'd been coveting for a while as well. And so I ended up with a 3 1/4 inch teak top whorl spindle. The shaft is maple and it weighs 46.5 pounds. And as per Wayne's craftsmanship and his just all of that, it's just beautiful. So it spins, I'm turning it upside down to show you. It just spins beautifully. It's a little bit heavier. I'm thinking that this will probably be a plying spindle for me. My favorite drop spindle weights are sort of between 25 grams and 33 grams. But this is just gorgeous. And I love the teak on top. We had teak furniture growing up, so as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I love that. So a little bit closer up of what the top looks like here for you guys. It's just got gorgeous wood grain. And anyways, just a big loss for the spinning community. And I know there's a couple of things going on right now in the spinning community. They're really tragic. If anybody's been following this stuff about JC Boggs Faulkner, I'm not going to talk about it here, but it's just really sad. And our thoughts are with her and her family as well at this time. So yeah. And so to Kelly Kapoor, thank you for selling these and for giving us an opportunity to have these, and to, you know, I always think of him when I use my Kapoor spindles. So yeah, just sad stuff. Okay. It's because I was looking at the ounces. I said 36.5 pounds. I meant 36.5 grams. 46.5 grams, or 1.64 ounces. So it's a bit heavy. It really has a nice feel to it. I'm actually, yeah, like I said, I think this would be a really great plying spindle, or a great spindle for spinning slightly thicker singles. So more like a DK or a worsted weight singles, because it's not going to spin super fast, but it's going to spin for a long time because it's heavy. So yeah, I thought so. Rebecca says Becca is Bethy40 on the Slack channel and in Ravelry, for those who don't know her. She said, yeah, plying weight for her too. It's just a really nice, heavy, it's a very substantial spindle. Yeah, and my steampunk spindle is roughly that weight as well. It's maybe a little bit heavier, but this is really nice. Anyway, so let's move on. All right. I'm just looking at the chat channel. It's hard to go back and forth, but you guys know that. You're used to it now. All right. Let's talk about socks. I have been knitting. Remember, I knit. I have to grab them out of the pile. They actually match my shirt. How hilarious is that? This is my favorite color. I love this color so much. So let me switch my cameras around. And then we'll get this back into focus. I'm going to talk about these other little skeins and little swatches in a little bit. Unfortunately, these aren't on my sock blockers. I can grab my sock blockers if you guys would prefer to see them on my sock blockers. but these are my finished. So this was, let me grab my sock blockers. Oh, now I'm creating disasters. Things are falling off the wall. Sorry about the banging if you heard anything. Okay, I haven't woven in the ends yet. Surprise, surprise. But these are my, these were Crafty Jacks, which is Katrina's yarn or fiber. Superwash BFL. Hackled with vegan cashmeres, which is basically a microfiber. Vegan yarns, microfiber, vegan cashmere, whatever you want to call it. And so I finished the second one. They're very bright, and they're 50-50. So I weighed out all the fiber, and I took half of the Superwash BFL, and I took half of the microfiber, and I hackled them together, and then I dizzed it off, and I spun it up onto, I divided it up by weight, like made 3 separate piles, and then I spun 3 separate bobbins to make a traditional 3-ply. And this is actually all that's left over, that little skein, because I did want to have enough left over that I would have like a lovely little like sample skein to go with this, because what I'm really curious about is how this is going to wear. Now let me grab my other sock blocker that fell off the wall, because I finished one of the, remember last show, had I cast these on yet, or was I ripping them out? I feel like I was ripping them out. This is, yeah, the pile of socks behind me is pretty epic. I think I counted, there's 29 pairs, I think. Plus these 3 will be, because there's a third pair that I'm working on. Yeah, I'll be up to 32 pairs of hand knit socks. It's pretty good. And then a few pairs that I've donated over the years and gotten rid of because they don't fit me very well. So it's pretty good. And like 29 out of like 40, the 40 pairs that I've knit in total in my whole life, 29 are the Fish Lips Kiss Heel. So you can tell that I'm partial to that pattern. Okay, so here is the other sock that I'm working on. So this is Sweet Georgia BFL with nylon. So it's an 85-15% blend. And this is in the colorway for, it was False Creek. And it was a club colorway from back in November of 2016. And this colorway was originally dyed on Wensleydale and went out as a club colorway on Wensleydale. But for some reason, the dye separated. It was really weird. And so when you washed the Wensleydale, basically all the dye washed off. But I ended up spinning Wensleydale singles. It's some of my favorite yarn I've ever spun, actually, funnily enough. And I used the singles, even though the color was really washed out, it was still really, really, really pretty. And I knit a pair of fingerless mitts for my sister-in-law, who still wears them. And I never got this yarn spun, the Superwash BFL nylon, because by the time I got the fiber after they sent out new fiber that month, I had like 4 days to spin it, and I really wanted to do Superwash BFL nylon. I really wanted to spin it as a traditional 3-ply because I was like, why would I not use that for socks? It's superwash and it's got the nylon in it. And so, because at that time I was spinning club for Sweet Georgia every month before they decided to do other things and let the club go. So in the end, this sat for almost 2 years. And I finally pulled it out in July, maybe. And I decided to just make a real push and get the yarn spun. And I talked about the yarn on the show, but I was kind of working on it a little bit in the background and behind the scenes because I really wanted to get it done. And I just sort of had to like fire through and get it done. So here is the very mangled ball of yarn. I don't know why it's getting so mangled. It's just like unraveling. I don't know why. Usually my balls are okay in my project bags, but oh, I forgot something upstairs. I have to talk about that in a minute. Anyways, that's the skein of yarn, and I'm almost finished the second sock. So Obviously, I'm finished the foot, and then the leg of the sock, I'm almost to the point where I can start the cuff. So I did the cuffs on all of these socks a little bit longer than I normally do. Can you guys see that there? I did a full 2-inch cuff on both of them, just to see. I wanted to use up as much of the yarn as possible, but I also wanted to have a pretty good sample left. So I spun over 400 yards for each of these yarns. And yeah, this is the yarn that I had to downsize needles. So these were knit, the yellow ones were knit on 2.25 millimeter needles, and these ones I started on 2.25 millimeter needles, and oh my goodness, it just like did not work. It ended up yeah, the fabric was just terrible, and when you put your hand in it, you could see right through it, even through 2 layers. And I think I showed you guys that on the podcast. I think I showed you how loose it was, and I remember I unraveled it. Remember, I unraveled it when I was talking to you guys because I needed to get it re-skeined. So now on the 2 millimeter needles, it's really interesting because this yarn is quite a bit thinner, even though when you do a wraps per inch test, it's the same thickness as this yarn. But because of just the way it knits, and it's so, because of the superwash BFL, like it just really stretches out, and it's got a lot of spring to it that the microfiber doesn't have. It was a much more, it wasn't a responsive yarn like the BFL. So because it was only 50% BFL, it didn't have that same elasticity. So this really kind of thins out as you're knitting with it. And I could have gone down to 1.75 millimeter needles, but I just thought I can't be knitting these forever. And the 2 millimeter needles still makes a pretty good fabric. Like it's still okay. It's definitely tighter. And when I put them on, like you can see on the sock form here, it's okay. So not bad at all. Sorry, I was just checking my cameras there. So that's kind of where I'm at with these, and I think these will be done by next show. And of course, we've got sock content coming up in the Patreon stuff for October, November, December. So these are yarns that I'm going to be talking about in even more detail in those months. And I think my biggest thing was when I started knitting with this yarn and how thin it became when I started knitting with it. The 2 things that I sort of would do if I was to do this project again, I would ply it even tighter. So after I plied it and put it through the wheel and pulled it off and skeined it, I would actually put it into a ball and re-ply it and tighten it up even more, because I'm finding as I'm knitting with it, it's just not as tight as it could be. The twist angle on this is about 45 degrees, and I think it probably needs to be more like 55. Probably needed one or 2 more treadles per sort of 12-inch length as I was plying. And the other thing is, if I wasn't knitting under a time deadline, because I am thinking in the back of my mind about the content for the fall, I would have gone down in needle size and knit these even tighter. And I think for me and for my degree of wear, they'll be fine. But unfortunately, if I were even a little bit harder on my socks than I am, I think they would have to be knit quite a bit tighter. So that was sort of 2 things that I sort of was like, because it's funny, this yarn relaxed as well. It's not as tightly spun as it was when it came off the wheel either. I'll see if I can unskein it and I'll show you like right up close. It relaxed down to about 45 degrees as well, and I think it could have been more like 55 degrees of twist angle as well. It's just not that tight. So I like my sock yarns to be quite a bit tighter. So are you guys having problems with the camera on your end, Jill and Eve? Because it's looking fine on my end and it looks fine on YouTube, but I know you guys both put the question mark there. Okay. The twist angle of the singles before plying, I don't check usually, because it's really hard to tell when you're spinning a solid color singles. It's really, really hard to tell how many, like what your twist angle is. Even if you do a ply back test, you lose. It's not as accurate as it could be. These were both spun. No, they weren't. Sorry. I was going to say they were both spun at the same ratio, but they weren't. This one was spun on a ratio of 17:1 on my Lundrum. And I can't remember exactly how many times I treadled per 12 inches, but it was tight enough that when I did a ply back test, the yarn looked very close, very similar to this. But of course you're looking at it as a 2-ply, so it's a little bit deceiving. And then with this one, I spun it on my Magicraft Suzy Pro, and I used a ratio of, I think I was spinning at like 24 or 20, whatever the highest ratio is. I can never remember. It's the highest ratio that I have access to. And again, when I plied back, when I did my 2-ply ply back test, I was looking for a really tight 2-ply yarn. And I don't know how many times I was treadling over 12 inches, because I usually do about 12 inches and I treadle a certain number of times through that 12 inches instead of trying to do like one treadle per 1 inch. It's easier to do it over 12 inches. There's a teaching content video on spinning singles that shows you how to do that. And I think that really, sorry, there's sparkle in this. It's all twisted in, so I must have spun it in. So I don't really check the twist angle of my singles, but I do when I ply back and do that two-ply ply back. I want a really tight yarn. And if I'm not getting that really, really tight 2-ply, then I add more treadles as I spin out to that 12 inches, if that makes sense. But look at the singles video and then you'll know. It was part of the teaching content. If you look at the channel, you'll find the singles video in there, and it'll teach you how to do that, adding that twist over 12 inches, however many inches works for you. Some people like 16, some people like 10. I like 12. It just works really well for me. So hopefully that answers your question. Oh, I see, Jill. Okay, gotcha. Oh, okay, so Suzanne has a thought. I never thought about the ply relaxing after it sat, but I pulled out a yarn that was about 6 months old and the twist seemed really loose. So we actually chatted about this on a show a while ago, because Becca, you were here in the live stream as well, and you said the same thing. I find when yarns sit for a while, and I don't know like why it is, or if it just they relax. If it's only the superwash fibers, I do find the superwash fibers are worse for this, but they just seem to like relax. Like they seem to just kind of, whereas I do find that my yarns that are 100% like fiber, that aren't superwash, they don't relax as much. As long as I've washed them and finished them, they stay a bit crisper. But my superwash yarns, if they sit for any length of time, even if it's just a couple weeks, I often feel like I probably should put them back through the wheel. And usually with sock yarn, I do. But this time around I didn't, because I was knitting with them so quickly afterwards. And it's funny because, like I said a few minutes ago, I would actually, if I could go back and do it again, I would put both of these back through the wheel. They just seem to relax as they sit for a while, and they just sort of seem to, and there's nothing, when it's superwash, there's no scales, there's nothing to hold the yarn together, right? There's nothing in the finishing process that locks it in together. Unlike with like 100% wool, even the down breeds will at least lock together. But with superwash, there's nothing. Like they just are sliding over top of each other, and it's almost like they just kind of relax and lose their twist and kind of go back to basically being not spun. And I just find you need to like tighten it up. So I would love to hear others' thoughts on that, because it is a thing. And we talked about it a lot a few months ago. I don't find the same with cellulose fibers. I don't know about silk. I haven't spun a lot of silk that's not blended. But definitely I haven't found that with the cellulose fibers, and I haven't found that particularly with flax. Maybe it's a thing and I just don't have enough experience with it. Again, if somebody wants to weigh in, that would be great. Yeah, Rebecca says, yep, I am the same. Fiber content definitely affects it. Many yarns lose some twist after sitting for a while. It would be interesting to observe long-term wear in those cases. Yes. See, that's what I'm wondering about with these two pairs of socks. So the reason why I'm blasting through to trying to finish this other one is I'm going to wear these two pairs of socks. I'm going to wear one pair for an entire week nonstop, and then I'm going to wear the other pair nonstop for a week. And we're going to compare wear patterns and see which pair wore better. I did have it with one silk skein. So Zwalu says, I actually need to reply it and the skein got botched. Oh, that's too bad. I hope you are able to detangle it. That's too bad. I remember reading in ply that there were two schools of thought for socks: super twisty singles with looser ply versus the other way to preserve the softness of the fabric. Yeah, that's a great point, Alex. So there's been a lot of discussion about this whole idea of, do you make the twist in the singles higher for socks, or do you make the twist higher in the ply for socks, or do you do both? I personally, with my little experiments, I like both. I like it to be really, really tightly spun as singles, and I like it to be really, really tightly plied. Part of that, though, and I have to put in a bit of a disclaimer here, is I try to spin as much of my stuff that I spin. I try to spin as much of it like natural fibers as possible. I'm not a big superwash fan, and I'm not buying a lot of superwash anymore. There's lots of reasons for that. There's lots of reasons and a good case to be made for superwash as well, because there's a lot of especially in the States, which doesn't affect us so much up in Canada, but in the States, the superwash process and superwashing has really revitalized the wool industry in the US. So there's a lot of reasons to be kind of okay with superwash, and they try to preserve and clean as much of the water as they possibly can and reuse it as much as they can. That said, superwash is kind of like a whole other fiber, and it's a whole other sort of skill set to learn how to spin, because it's very, very slippery. But some of this stuff I find personally, and there's probably those out there that will disagree with me, and that's totally fine. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Because most of my socks are knit to be worn, obviously, and because of our life right now and our lifestyle and how things are right now, I pretty much only do superwash for socks. Like, I don't use superwash fibers for pretty much anything else. It's mostly just for socks. I need to be able to machine wash our socks. I need to be able to get them clean. We've got dogs. Our floors are usually not that clean. We were just complaining this morning at the kids, because James traipsed through the whole main floor of the house in his boots, and of course he got to the front door and he's like, oh, because he realized what he'd done. I need to be able to throw our socks my socks, and Mike, I'd knit for him too, into the wash. And so I find some of this stuff doesn't really apply when you're knitting with superwash or spinning superwash, because you just need so much twist to hold it together. It's not like spinning socks out of like Gotland, where as soon as you add too much twist, it makes rope and it's really, really uncomfortable to walk on. But the socks are going to be indestructible, but you can't machine wash them. They're going to felt. So it's, two edges of it's two sides of the thing. Like with superwash, to make socks, you need high twist singles, high twist ply. But like with some of the other socks, like with Gotland, you probably could get away with like actually quite low twist singles, which was in one of the articles in one of the ply magazines. And I tried to find it and I couldn't find it, but she made single socks out of Gotland and like could not destroy them no matter what she did. Towards the end of her like experiment, she was walking on the concrete outside, like scuffing her feet to try to make a hole in them, and they absolutely wouldn't make a hole. So I think it really depends on the fiber you're working with and how much that fiber can handle twist. Because with superwash, it stays soft no matter what. So, I mean, obviously there's a limit, but really it's going to be pretty soft no matter what, and it can handle that twist. It also holds it together. So, yeah. Becca, you are definitely not the only one with dirtyish floors. There are priorities in life. Like, my floors are not my priority. I'm just like, I can't do everything. So Cellulose fibers don't have the same elasticity as protein fibers. Totally good point. I imagine that has something to do with how they handle twist. It does. I know that is why cellulose fibers crease more, especially linen. That's a good point, actually, Becca. So I'm just getting caught up on the chat, so just bear with me for a sec. Yes, cat hair. Oh my goodness, dog hair and cat hair in socks is just the worst. Like, if anybody knows how to hand wash socks to actually get that stuff out, I would love to hear, because to me, it's like into the machine right away. Zwalu says, I'm thinking of... Yeah, so just... There's lots and lots and lots of thoughts out there around socks, and that's why we're doing this for the next couple months and chatting about socks, because I'm going to talk a little bit on the show about how these wear and how they compare to each other. They're both superwash BFL, but the second fiber is different. So we'll chat a little bit about that and see how they wear and what they look like in 3 months, because that's going to be really interesting to see. So the third pair that I had done, and the yarn is done. I showed this. Did I show you guys this yarn before it was dyed? It was the white. It's Suffolk. It's from my friend Margaret's farm. I have so much of her fiber to spin that I actually am like feeling a bit overwhelmed, but it's lots and lots of socks for the future. So we indigo dyed this back in July with my friend Kelsey and Jess and Mari. I need to reskein it, or not reskein it. I need to wind it into a center pull ball. So it's sort of, I haven't really done a lot with it since Kelsey gave it back to me, because she was so kind and finished it off for me, because we were going away and I couldn't get it rinsed and do all the things. And she's like, oh, I'll do it for you. No worries. I was like, oh, thank you so much. So this is that 3-ply that I spun. And I spun this true woolen. So it's a carded prep. It was roving. And I spun it long backwards draw, just, out and then winding it in, out, winding it in. And then when we got to the indigo part, and then I 3-plied it, I was going to 2-ply it. So it's a little bit thicker than I maybe would have wanted if I was going to do a 2-ply. If I was planning for a 3-ply, but everybody, I asked the Slack community and on the Slack channel, and they were like, no, let's see it as a 3-ply. So I was like, okay, fine. So I 3-plied it. Really, really beautiful twist angle. It's got a really nice, tight twist angle. I'm really happy with how this yarn turned out. And then when I got to Kelsey's, she had set up the indigo and everything, and I was standing there and I was like, I don't really want to just have like a solid colored skein. So you can see there that there's that resist. So if anybody's done any resist dyeing, you'll know what I did. I took this skein and just like this, and it's really not that creative. I just did a big knot and I tied it really, 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 really tight. And I ended up with this really cool resist. So I'm hoping that it'll add some interest when I'm knitting it. It definitely adds interest to the skein. And I love indigo. This is my favorite color, this yellow, but this is my other favorite color is indigo. I just absolutely love it. And seeing the yarn come out, it was like this color of my sock. And then of course it hits the sunlight and the oxygen. It's the oxygen in the air that changes it to this color, and it just kept getting darker and darker and darker. We put it in 3 times. So we got that really, really dark saturated color. And oh my goodness, it was so much fun. Everybody else had a whole bunch of stuff that they were dyeing and a whole bunch of stuff that they were doing. But I just had the one skein because I knew what I wanted, and I was still working on this like the morning of to get it done. But I got it done. So that was my results of the indigo. If you want to see more about our indigo dyeing session and some of the stuff around indigo, check out episode 99B. It was sort of out of order because I released it after episode 100 because of just getting the editing done and whatnot. But the second half of 99B is our indigo session. And Rugger, Kelsey's Lab Golden Cross, he's huge. He kept taking stuff and he was being a bit of a picklehead, which isn't unusual for him, but he's such a great dog, nobody minded. So that turned out. So this pair of socks, this is going on the needles as soon as this is done. So this is my motivation to get these done. So I've been working on them at like soccer last night, and I worked on them at swimming. I've been working on them at lessons and pickup, and everybody thinks I'm crazy because it's the beginning of the year, so nobody knows like that I drag my knitting around everywhere. And I haven't taken a spindle yet because I've been trying to get my socks done. They probably already think I'm totally weird. So, not that I care, but still. So, didn't your singles tangle near the end? Oh my goodness. So this yarn, did I show on the show that I had loaded all of my weaving bobbins to spin it? Because originally I was going to knit this. Originally I was going to ply this as a 2-ply. So all of the singles were on 2 bobbins. So I had to rewind them all onto weaving bobbins. And because the singles were so springy, because it's Suffolk and it's that spiral crimp, they were so springy and so active because of all the twist in them. They literally popped off the ends of the weaving bobbins. So I overfilled them for one, which has never been a problem in the past. And I ended up with this absolute mess. So I figure I probably lost about 100 yards of yarn. So this probably would have been a 500 yard skein if I hadn't have lost all that yarn. So lesson learned, use bigger bobbins when you're dealing with these really springy yarns. I have I've linked to them in the past, and I've talked to them about in the past, but I have bobbins up, which are storage bobbins that go on like the end of an electric drill, and you can wind your singles on that way. And they're quite a bit bigger. They're more like a standard size bobbin, and they ended up, like, I put I saved as many of the singles as I possibly could by putting them on there. But in hindsight, I should have done that from the beginning. The weaving bobbins, just the little Ashford ones, they just weren't big enough. I needed the big ends to hold because they were just so springy. So lesson learned, that was definitely my fault. It was a newbie mistake that I should know better. So I was really kicking myself. That was not good. So yeah, it excuse my language, it sucked. So I was mad at myself because I should know better. So that's a lot of talk about socks. I'm hoping these will be on the needles and mostly done by the time we chat next time. And then I'll have the 3 pairs to show you guys. And then I'm going to start wearing them. And we'll see what I think about it all. So I will keep you posted as always. The next thing I wanted to chat about is the yarn that I was taking off while we were at the beginning of the show. It's here. I left the fiber in the other room, so I'm really sorry about that. And I'm hoping that the camera is bright enough that you'll be able to see this. This is fresh off the wheel. This is my Llama fiber that I've been working on. That's the Llama silk blend. That's the pin drafted top. And it's just come out absolutely beautifully. And the reason why, so my original plan was to spin each bobbin. I have a pound of this fiber, and I was going to spin, just consecutive bobbins, and then, ply the first bobbin with the last bobbin, second bobbin with the next bobbin, and so on. My hands are blue now from the Indigo. I have to rinse it again. But I got through the second bobbin, and I was like, I'm going to ply this just to make sure that this is actually what I want to make, because I didn't do a sample this time around, and I didn't do a sample card. I know it's bad. But I kind of had just one afternoon sat down and started spinning it, because I've been wanting to spin this fiber forever, and I've had it since like 2014, which is a long time for me. Like, I don't usually stash fiber for that long. Anyhow, I'm also spinning it thicker than I normally would, and these camelids tend to be a little bit denser anyways, and they just make heavier yarn anyways. So I was like, maybe I made the wrong decision by spinning my singles a bit thicker, because I was like, the yarn's going to come out a little bit heavier. It's going to be more like a heavy DK worsted. Like, maybe that's not the right thing. And I was just second guessing myself the whole time. And I'll answer your question in a sec, Eve. And I just decided, you know what? There's no spinning police. Nobody's going to get mad at me for plying these 2 bobbins together. And I'm just going to take stock and see what I think of the yarn. So I plied it up last night, and I finished plying this morning after I got back from CrossFit. And that's what the yarn looks like. And it's just gorgeous. But I'm glad that I took a pause and didn't just keep going just because. Because I think I would still be second guessing myself, even like, you know, seeing it now. You can see the sheen of the silk in it. I know the camera's having trouble focusing. There we go. Like there's just such a sheen. It's really, really pretty. And I plied it as tightly as I possibly could. So the reason for that is just I wanted to see if this fiber could handle, as it falls off the table, I wanted to see if this fiber could handle the extra twist, because I didn't make the singles particularly high twist. They're what I would call sort of a moderate amount of twist, enough to hold it together, but not so tight that when you ply the singles back, they're very, very loosely, the ply back test is very, very loose. They're not low twist, but they're definitely nowhere near high twist at all. So I offset it with a really, really tight ply twist, and I really like the results. It's thicker than I normally like to spin, but it's such a gorgeous yarn that I'm kind of like, I don't care. It's really, really soft. It is dense. It's a little bit heavier compared to wool. But man, is it really, really pretty. It's all pigtailing because it needs to go into the wash. But I'll just skein it up. And you guys can see lots and lots of flyaways, lots and lots of veg matter came out of it when I was plying, which is kind of nice, because I knew there was a certain amount of veg matter in there. And I've shown this fiber and what it looked like and everything on previous shows. So have a look at some of the other episodes if you haven't seen it. It's basically just a big bump of fiber. They had only done this little bit of this baby llama, and they put in this yellow silk with it, and the silk's cut, so you get like these chunks of silk throughout it. So it's not like the yellow silk goes through the whole thing, but it's just a really, really lovely yarn. So I'm glad I took the time to ply, get a big sample. I'm going to do a knitted swatch of this over the next week or so, once it's washed and dried and finished, and then I'll really have a good idea of what I want to do with it, because I don't want to stash this. I'd like to work with it right away. I'm thinking like a big oversized blanket shawl or something, because yeah, it just warms my heart. It is so, so, so pretty. You can really see the yellow in there, in the light, and the sheen of the alpaca, of the llama, and the silk. So I'm kind of in love. I'm really liking this yarn, and I haven't had a yarn that I've been like really excited about for a while, so I'm glad to have one. It's nice when you have those checkpoints with yourself and just say, you know what, I need to check and make sure this is really what I want to commit to for yarn. So yeah, turned out really well. I'm just going to reskein this. I'm going to wash it this afternoon. So after I get off with you guys, I'm going to go wash it. All right, let's power through. Eve had a question. Did you say yay or nay to getting a bobbin winder and bobbins? I have one because I have a rigid heddle. I wouldn't necessarily go out there and buy a bobbin winder and bobbins if you don't weave. You don't really need it. Bobbins up are a great option. They're like, I don't know, $4 per bobbin. And you can use your electric drill, which some people have and some people don't have. So that's kind of cool. And then you can also use your they do fit on a bobbin winder. So if you find an old bobbin winder that they fit on, you can use that too. So they're great. They're a very affordable storage bobbin. The other thing you can do is there are other weaving bobbins out there that are a little bit bigger, and some of them fit on the shaft of wheels, and you can store your singles that way. So you can wind them off your bobbins straight onto the storage bobbin on your wheel. And some wheel makers have storage bobbins that you can order from the manufacturer that fit on the shaft, and you can just wind them on. Really super high uptake, and just zip them right on. So there's a couple of options. You don't have to buy a bobbin winder and bobbins and weaving bobbins. Oh, thank you guys. Llamageddon, I love that. Now I've got llama on my tongue. I can feel it. Ugh, it's got that gross. All right, I'm watching the time because I have to go pick up Nora at preschool. Because this year her school is Monday, Wednesday, Friday instead of Tuesday, Thursday. Hence the change in day for our live streams. And if you haven't seen that for the Patreon post, I've posted the dates for the live stream from now through till December. So please have a look there if you haven't seen that post. I was playing with my blending board in August, and because we finished up our carding theme this past 3 months, September was our last month. And Woolen Spinning Radio, for those who are Patreon subscribers, will be released today. I'm going to do it as soon as I turn this off. I was playing with my blending board, and I did 2 samples for the Thoughtful Spinner this month, and it was really, really fun to see. So I wanted to show you guys really, really quickly. I did one sample where, and same colors, same fibers in both. I did one where I made strips on the blending board, and then I pulled them off, and so they were very clear colors. And that's this one here, and this yarn here was the clear strips, and then with the other one I just randomly put the fiber wherever, and I just kind of, you know, put it all over, and this was the results here. So blended up, no self-striping. I really like this a lot. And then this was the skein that went with it, so really, really pretty, but all blended up. So striping, blended, totally different effects. The Puni style Rolex, when you pull them off the blending board, the one had like very clear stripes of color, and then the other one where I just put it all over and there was no rhyme or reason, when I pulled it off, like it was all heathered and the colors were all, and there was a color under color and they were all mixed up, and you know, 2 totally different results, which is really cool. So if you want to make a self-striping on your blending board, you do strips. And if you want to do a blended up one that's got a little bit of marling, a little bit of color twisting, I could actually see this in a shawl. It reminds me of the yarn that I made. They weren't Puni style Rolex. They were mini batlings, little nests off my drum carder that I made. My big blue and green blanket shawl out of my vanilla shawl, the original one that I did, reminds me, this fabric reminds me, the colors remind me a lot of that. So I wanted to show that to you guys really quickly because that was the Thoughtful Spinner for September, and I just love how these particular samples turned out, because they all turned out really differently. In August we looked at hand cards, and the yarns are pretty much all the same. Even though we spun it all 3 different ways, the yarns are pretty much the same, which was really interesting because I thought they maybe would be different. I kind of thought they might not be, but this month they were totally different. So really fun. I hope everybody has a wonderful couple of weeks. I'm trying to think of what's up and coming here, but there's really nothing. We're just kind of getting into the swing of school. And I'm going to sign off because I need to go get Nora. And I hope you guys are doing really, really well. Happy spinning wherever you are. And until next time, have a good couple of days. Bye, everyone.